Science is a field of amazingly diverse skeptics. Surprisingly, 97% of researchers agree that human activity is causing global warming. On the other hand, public opinion is closer to a 50-50 split. Why is there a difference? The key to understanding this involves how climate change is being communicated to the public. Currently, most climate communication speaks directly to the head, our rational mind, while ignoring the heart, our feelings and imagination. Surveys show that the more facts we receive about the climate crisis, the less we seem to care about the issue. Why is that? Psychologist Espen Stoknes has been investigating this paradox for years. He's uncovered some of the secret forces that prevent us from taking action on climate change. Together, let's explore the secrets of the psyche. Our minds are comprised of two main cognitive systems: the fast system, which is primal and based on gut reactions, and the slow system, based upon the rational and logical. Most climate communications are directed to the slow system, our rational mind, and rely too heavily upon facts and data. We need to reframe our messaging to speak to the rational and emotional, the head and the heart. Effective communication activates the whole person, not just by using information, but by telling stories that awaken every part of our psychology. If these ideas sound familiar, it's because marketers and politicians have been using them for decades to sell products and to win elections. But the climate crisis is more complex than a consumer product. It activates a series of psychological barriers that many of us fail to recognize. What is especially fascinating about Per Espen's research is that he's uncovered 5 barriers that are preventing us from taking action on climate change. Let's take a closer look. Conventional climate communication creates distance between the audience and the crisis. The framing of doom and gloom creates fear, guilt, and avoidance of the issues. There is dissonance between how we feel about climate change and how we behave in everyday life. To get rid of blame and guilt, we sometimes deny there's even a problem. And lastly, our limited sense of self-identity has made climate change a political issue when it's actually not. For us to bring down these barriers, we have to understand the different parts of our psychology that determine how we think and behave. Imagine your mind is like a house with multiple floors. We've already looked at the cognitive level. Now let's move to the second floor and explore the psychology of identity. In an occurrence known as confirmation bias, we seek out and accept information that fits into our worldview while rejecting the rest, no matter how true it may be. This helps to construct and preserve our identity and our egoic sense of self. When the sense of self expands to include our friends and family, we begin to establish an interpersonal self, where we come together with greater empathy for the lives of others. Social scientists are observing that many people are evolving even further, moving from the interpersonal self to the biospheric self, where empathy expands and the whole planet becomes a part of our identity. Now let's move down to the first floor and look at the psyche through the lens of social psychology. Social psychologists have discovered 3 factors that construct an attitude: knowledge, feelings, and behavior. When it comes to climate change, 75% of people's beliefs don't match their behavior. This causes a disturbance known as cognitive dissonance. For example, the meat industry is one of the largest contributors to climate change, yet many activists still eat meat. To reduce dissonance, we create self-justifications. The first thing the mind does is deceive itself.
What? I don't eat a lot of meat.
Second, the mind weakens the importance of the issue.
Fossil fuels are worse.
The third thing the mind does is add extra cognitions.
I changed my light bulbs, so it doesn't matter if I eat meat every day.
The fourth thing the mind does is deny there is anything wrong.
Meat has nothing to do with climate change.
If we want to eliminate cognitive dissonance, we need to align our behaviors with our beliefs, such as switching to a plant-based diet. Now let's go below the surface and look at our psyche through the lens of evolutionary psychology. and the 5 ancestral forces from our old mind that motivate behavior. Our ancient needs are coded into our genes, and although this is important to our survival, they often play out in irrational ways. Let's examine these 5 forces more closely. The first is self-interest. We have evolved to make decisions based upon our own self-interests, while often ignoring global concerns. For us to align our self-interests with the needs of the planet, we can do things like make electric vehicles more affordable. The next is status. The desire to have social status runs pretty deep. Companies like Tesla are making it super easy to have green status. Their cars look great and are better for the earth. Number 3 is social imitation. Because humans are social beings, we often imitate the behavior of those around us. The actions of one person can impact the lives of an entire community. Fourth, nature has programmed us to think short-term, which often prevents us from recognizing the long-term consequences of our actions. One way to solve this problem is for electric companies to supply green energy as a default, so our desires for instant gratification are met with long-term solutions. The last ancestral force involves how we perceive threats. Images of polar bears, as tragic as they may be, are too removed from our daily lives and do little to convince people of the immediate threats of climate change. By focusing on local threats like droughts, severe flooding, and intensified hurricanes, we see how climate change impacts us personally. By understanding these secrets, we can now bypass the psychological barriers that have prevented us from taking action on climate change. The distance barrier falls away when we focus on local issues that affect us personally. We move beyond fear messaging by sharing stories of the inspiring projects in our communities. The dissonance barrier comes down when we align our behavior with our beliefs on climate change. We can overcome the denial barrier by acknowledging the problems and by using them as opportunities for positive change. And at the heart of the new climate communications, we break through the identity barrier by envisioning an expanded sense of self, a new identity, one that is part of the global empathetic civilization embedded in great biospheric community. To learn more exciting solutions, check out Per Espen's new book and go to talkingclimate.org for some great tips.